captured on video the true story that revealed the shocking reality. Today, we delve into another chilling true crime story. If you find this content intriguing, please consider supporting my channel. Hit the subscribe button and ring the bell for notifications. Today's episode explores a tragic tale titled Fatal Love from the Past. Kindness, while a powerful force for good, can sometimes spell disaster for those who wield it. The instinct to help, protect, and prevent harm can paradoxically lead to dire consequences. It's crucial to discern who truly deserves our help and who we should cautiously avoid, particularly those we might cover for, hoping they'll realize their errors and reform. The case of Cecilia Haddad vividly illustrates the perils of placing faith in redemption over prudence. Cecilia, always seeing the best in others, particularly someone she once held dear, found that her protective instincts not only poisoned her life, but ultimately led to her demise. Despite her fears of causing her former lover any harm, he harbored no such reservations. After her death, he fled across the globe, evading justice, leaving behind a mystery that began unraveling one quiet spring morning. On April 29, 2018, an eerie silence enveloped Lane Cove River in Sydney, a tributary north of the Parramatta River, as a fisherman made a grisly discovery. Initially mistaking it for debris, he soon realized he was staring at a human body floating face down. Shocked and disbelieving, it only took a few moments for the reality to set in. The river concealed a dark secret. The body was that of a young woman with long, dark hair. The fisherman wasted no time, promptly notifying the authorities. Downstream, police retrieved her lifeless form, marked by signs of a violent struggle. With no identification or mobile phone, investigators faced the daunting task of piecing together her identity and the events leading to her tragic end. Initial examinations quickly ruled out the possibility of an accidental death. The body, which had been in the water for less than a day, bore clear signs of strangulation and defensive wounds on her hands, a testament to her desperate fight for life. Dressed in a t-shirt and wide pants filled with large pockets stuffed with stones, it was evident the killer intended for her body to sink and remain hidden. This chilling episode underscores the harsh reality that not everyone deserves our help, and sometimes extending kindness can lead to unforeseen tragedy. Cecilia Haddad's story is a sobering reminder of the need for caution and discernment in our interactions, highlighting the fine line between trust and vulnerability. Despite the grim circumstances, some of the stones intended to weigh down Cecilia's body had fallen out due to the pockets lacking fasteners, which ultimately allowed her body to float downstream. The toxicology report came back clean, showing no traces of alcohol, illegal substances, or strong medications in her system. Moreover, there were no indications of sexual violence. The autopsy confirmed that the cause of death was mechanical asphyxiation. Cecilia had been strangled by hand. Cecilia was estimated to be between 35 and 40 years old, prompting the police to review missing person reports for women in that age bracket. By the afternoon of the discovery, they had identified the deceased as 38-year-old Cecilia Haddad, who had become unresponsive on April 28th and missed a crucial work meeting. Confirmation of her identity was swift. A comparison to her photograph left detectives certain it was her, and relatives called in for identification verified this tragic deduction. The main suspect was quickly pinpointed, yet by then, he had already fled to another continent. Who was Cecilia Haddad? Born in the fall of 1979 in the vibrant city of Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, Cecilia was raised in a warm, middle-class family dedicated to providing their children with quality education and life's essentials. From an early age, Cecilia was remarkably intelligent, diligent, and ambitious. She consistently ranked among the top students in her school, aspiring to further her education at one of Brazil's prestigious universities. In addition to her academic pursuits, Cecilia was profoundly kind-hearted, never overlooking another's distress and always striving to assist within her means. Her peers and family knew her as compassionate, caring, and generous, always extending a helping hand whenever possible. After high school, Cecilia attended the Pontifical Catholic University of Rio de Janeiro, one of the country's premier private institutions, where she obtained her bachelor's and master's degrees in engineering. Following her graduation, she landed a coveted position at a leading mining company after impressing during her job interview, marking the start of a promising career. Cecilia Haddad's career skyrocketed almost immediately after joining the workforce. Within just a year, she emerged as a leading specialist in her field. At the young age of 27 in 2007, Cecilia decided to dramatically alter her life's trajectory by accepting an attractive job offer in Australia. Despite understanding the considerable challenges of living far from her familiar network of family and friends, she embraced the opportunity for change. Fluent in Spanish and Portuguese, Cecilia faced the formidable task of mastering English, which she managed to do swiftly and successfully. Upon moving to Australia, Cecilia secured a managerial role at one of the country's largest mining companies. Her amiable, sociable nature quickly endeared her to her colleagues, and she integrated seamlessly into her new environment. Cecilia's kindness extended beyond her professional life. She became actively involved in charity, particularly focusing on helping people and homeless animals. Her love for the outdoors also flourished as she took up hiking and skiing in the Australian mountains. In 2016, Cecilia channeled her entrepreneurial spirit into founding her own consulting firm. Her company specialized in assisting aspiring entrepreneurs, providing support and guidance to both native Australians and immigrants eager to establish their livelihoods in a new land. Cecilia's success in her venture allowed her not only to live comfortably, but also to support her family, eventually bringing her younger siblings over from Brazil to help them find employment and settle in. Financially independent and flourishing in her professional endeavors, Cecilia relished in the freedoms her success afforded her. She traveled extensively, pursued further education, and enjoyed a full and vibrant life. Despite her professional and financial success, Cecilia's personal life was marked by less fortune. During her university years back in Rio de Janeiro, she had fallen in love with Mario Marcelo Santoro, a man 7 years her senior. Mario, lacking ambition and drive, stood in stark contrast to Cecilia's dynamic and motivated personality. Cecilia's relationship with Mario was fraught with challenges, particularly due to his complacency and lack of aspiration. Nevertheless, she loved him deeply, constantly trying to spur him towards success and a more fulfilling life. However, when the opportunity arose for Cecilia to move to Australia, Mario balked at the idea of facing such a significant change and opted to stay behind. Unwilling to abandon her dreams for a shared future that seemed increasingly uncertain, Cecilia moved to Australia alone, determined to forge ahead with her goals. After much effort, but ultimately fruitless attempts to persuade her partner, Cecilia left for Australia alone. During the mid-2000s, while working in Sydney, she began an office romance with a colleague. This blossoming relationship eventually led to marriage. However, the marriage was short-lived, lasting less than 3 years, and the couple parted ways amicably without children or lingering bitterness. Remarkably, they maintained a friendly rapport even after their separation. In 2016, following her divorce, Cecilia decided to visit her parents and reconnect with old friends back home. By then, she had already transitioned from her corporate job to successfully growing her own business. Radiant and full of life, she shared her Australian adventures and future aspirations with enthusiasm during her visit. However, her trip took an unexpected turn on the third day when she unexpectedly encountered Mario, her ex-boyfriend whom she hadn't seen since moving to Australia 9 years prior. Mario was astounded by Cecilia's success, contrasting sharply with his own modest circumstances. This serendipitous meeting reignited old flames within Cecilia. Over the next few days, Cecilia and Mario revisited their favorite haunts, reminiscing about their past happiness. After returning to Sydney, their communication continued unabated. They talked and texted daily. Within a month, Cecilia, convinced of their renewed potential, purchased a plane ticket for Mario, inviting him to join her in Australia, believing he was the one she could be happy with forever. Cecilia welcomed Mario into her spacious apartment in a prestigious residential complex. For a while, she supported him entirely, even using her connections to secure him a well-paying job and actively promoting his career advancement. Blinded by love as she had been in her youth, Cecilia failed to see the signs that Mario was exploiting her generosity. However, the bliss was short-lived. Their relationship soon began to sour as Mario became increasingly jealous and controlling, attempting to dictate every aspect of Cecilia's life. Despite this, Cecilia, ever independent and strong-willed, resisted his attempts to manipulate her, standing firm against the encroaching dominant. Mario's interference extended into Cecilia's business affairs as he sought a share of her company, unhappy with working under someone else's command. The couple frequently clashed over this issue, but Cecilia always aimed for resolution, striving for compromises in an attempt to salvage their deteriorating relationship. Despite her efforts, Mario continued to emotionally drain her, excessively monitoring her activities, taking her phone and work laptop without permission, and attempting to isolate her from her social circle. After enduring nearly a year of this controlling behavior, Cecilia decided it was time for a change. She confronted Mario, informing him of her decision to end their relationship, a declaration that triggered an explosive reaction from him. Mario's response was volatile. He yelled insults, and in a fit of rage, he struck Cecilia across the face. Although he had been physically aggressive before, manifesting in pushing and bruising grabs, this was the first time he had escalated to hitting her. This act of violence was the final breach of Cecilia's tolerance. Resolute, she ordered him to leave her home immediately. Initially, Mario pleaded for forgiveness, bombarding Cecilia with apologetic messages, flowers, and gifts in an attempt to make amends. However, as Cecilia stood firm in her decision, Mario's tactics shifted from contrition to intimidation. He began to threaten her and resorted to stalking, transforming her life into an unbearable sequence of fear and anxiety. He rented an apartment only 10 minutes away from Cecilia's, ensuring he was never far. His obsession saw him calling her incessantly, sending numerous messages and frequently appearing at her doorstep, desperately trying to force a reconciliation. In January 2018, one late evening, Mario confronted Cecilia at her apartment once again. Despite her reluctance, he persisted and forcibly entered her home. The situation quickly escalated as he attacked her, but Cecilia managed to escape his grasp and barricade herself in another room. Trapped, she implored him through the door to reconsider his actions and leave. As Mario attempted to break down the barrier between them, Cecilia's pleas continued, filled with desperation. She warned him that she would call the police if he did not desist. Facing the imminent threat of legal consequences, Mario finally relented. His aggression subsided, and he left her apartment, leaving Cecilia shaken but unharmed for the moment. This pattern of harassment and aggression marked a dark period in Cecilia's life, demonstrating the severe impact of toxic relationships. Her experiences highlight the importance of recognizing the signs of abusive behavior early and taking decisive action to protect oneself from potential harm. Cecilia chose not to report Mario's harassment and threats to the authorities, aware that his visa had expired and any official notice could lead to his immediate deportation back to Brazil. Despite her enduring compassion for the man she once loved, Cecilia knew that her own safety was compromised. With no other choice, she temporarily moved out of her apartment to stay with her sister Carol and later, a close friend named Rita. Both women sensed the danger Mario posed and urged Cecilia to file a police report, but she hesitated, fearing the repercussions it might have on him. Hoping he would come to his senses and cease his disturbing behavior, Cecilia believed Mario incapable of seriously harming her. However, upon her return to her apartment in early April 2018, unsettling evidence suggested otherwise. She discovered that Mario had accessed her apartment multiple times during her absence using a set of keys he had retrieved after forcibly entering one night. Neighbors also reported seeing him lurking around the complex frequently, heightening Cecilia's anxiety. Despite strong recommendations from her neighbors to seek police intervention, Cecilia decided to manage the situation on her own. She planned to change her apartment locks and opted to live incognito, avoiding drawing any attention to herself in hopes that Mario would eventually give up his pursuit. For more than 2 weeks, she lived like a shadow in her own home, keeping the lights off, remaining quiet, and only leaving when she was certain Mario was not in the vicinity. The constant stress took its toll, nearly pushing Cecilia to a breaking point. Then, unexpectedly on April 25th, 2018, Mario reached out to Cecilia with a surprising change of tone. Speaking calmly, he confessed his realization of the turmoil he had caused and promised to cease his harassment. He apologized for everything and revealed his plans to return to Rio de Janeiro, having purchased a ticket for an early morning flight on April 28th. Mario requested a final meeting to bid her a proper farewell, a strange yet seemingly sincere goodbye. Cecilia agreed to meet Mario, but she insisted it be at the airport where they could talk safely. Following their phone conversation, Cecilia felt an immense sense of relief. Her tormentor had chosen to leave, and she believed this would finally end the harassment. She shared her relief and joy with her sister Carol, telling her about the planned airport farewell. Carol, however, did not share Cecilia's optimism. She sensed something amiss and pleaded with Cecilia not to meet Mario. Cecilia, buoyed by the thought of closing this painful chapter, reassured her sister that nothing untoward could happen in such a public place as an airport. Cecilia was looking forward to starting afresh, her spirits lifted by the prospect of ending her nightmare. Unfortunately, the hoped-for resolution did not come to pass. On Saturday, April 28th, Cecilia was scheduled to arrive at Sydney International Airport at 7 a.m. to bid Mario farewell. She had a busy day ahead with important work meetings lined up. The night before, she had a final conversation with Carol, who again expressed her concerns. Yet, Cecilia remained resolute, wanting to ensure Mario would leave Australia. The following day, instead of the expected call confirming Mario's departure, Carol received an unusual message from Cecilia. She claimed she was heading to the mountains to reflect and clear her mind for a few days. Attempts to contact her were futile. Her phone was already switched off. Alarmingly, similar messages had been sent to several of Cecilia's friends and colleagues, and she missed all her scheduled appointments, an uncharacteristic behavior for her. By that evening, worried and with no word from Cecilia, her family and friends reported her missing to the police, providing them with Mario's details as a potential suspect. There was a fleeting hope that she might still be found safe. However, this hope was dashed the next morning when Carol was summoned to identify Cecilia's body. The police investigation intensified on April 29th as officers scoured the riverbank upstream for any signs or evidence linked to the crime. They discovered a pair of men's shoes soaked and discarded in the grass near the river, suggesting the killer had removed them to avoid leaving tracks. Back at Cecilia's apartment, detectives found dried footprints made by wet socks. This evidence led them to wonder why the perpetrator would return to the scene after committing the crime. Mario, not having a car of his own, resorted to using the vehicle of the woman he had tragically deprived of life to dispose of her body. Inside the car, investigators found sand, fragments of coastal vegetation, and puddles of river water. Additionally, they discovered numerous fingerprints that matched those of the suspect. Mario's movements on the day of the crime were meticulously tracked through his cell phone signal and captured on several street surveillance cameras, painting a detailed picture of his actions. Authorities determined that Mario took a taxi to the airport, managing to track down the taxi driver who had transported him. The driver recounted that his passenger had been calm, but had requested an unusual detour to a small bridge crossing a river away from the main city road. At this secluded spot, Mario asked the driver to stop, got out of the vehicle, and was seen throwing a bag and what appeared to be a set of keys into the water. After discarding these items, he returned to the taxi and they continued to the airport. The police, guided by the taxi driver, visited the bridge where the items were thrown. Divers were summoned to search the riverbed, and due to the relatively weak current at this location, they soon recovered the mysterious bag along with the set of keys. Inside the bag, they found Cecilia's cell phone, work laptop, various documents, her wallet, and personal belongings. It appeared that Mario was attempting to create the illusion that Cecilia had left town voluntarily, suggesting she might have gone to the mountains and disposed of any duplicate keys to her apartment to prevent access. By the time Cecilia's body was retrieved from the river, Mario had already landed in Rio de Janeiro, confident he would evade capture and punishment. However, the clear evidence of his involvement led to international cooperation. Interpol was notified, and the manhunt extended beyond Australian borders, attracting considerable media coverage. After the Australian police compiled and presented incontrovertible evidence of Mario's involvement in the brutal crime, he was officially declared wanted in Brazil. Mario was apprehended on July 7, 2018, at a friend's apartment where he had been hiding. He did not resist arrest and immediately requested a lawyer. Initially, during interrogations, Mario denied any wrongdoing, but as the evidence against him mounted, he began to confess. Nonetheless, even in his confession, he attempted to shift some of the blame onto Cecilia. Mario presented a starkly different narrative, claiming that it was Cecilia who had been stalking him post-breakup, disrupting his peace. He asserted that his decision to leave the country was an attempt to escape her relentless pursuit, but alleged that Cecilia had stolen his passport to thwart his departure. According to Mario, on the morning of the incident, he visited Cecilia's apartment solely to retrieve his passport, which she reportedly refused to return. This refusal led to a struggle during which he claimed her death was an accidental consequence. Mario contended that he attempted life-saving measures on Cecilia, performing CPR and chest compressions in a desperate bid to revive her. When he realized she was beyond help, he said panic set in, prompting him to dispose of her body and any incriminating evidence by dumping them in the river. This, he claimed, was a panicked response to an unintended tragedy. Reconstructing the timeline of that fateful day proved challenging, as Mario frequently altered his account, seemingly in an effort to confuse the investigation and garner sympathy. His emotional displays during interrogations did little to sway the authorities, who found his narrative implausible. Testimonies from Cecilia's family, friends, and colleagues painted a picture of a woman tormented by Mario, contradicting his claims of being the victim. The investigation concluded that by the time Mario had purchased his plane ticket, he had already resolved to end Cecilia's life and had meticulously planned the murder. On the morning of April 28th, Mario arrived at Cecilia's building around 5:30 a.m. and rang the intercom. Unaware of his intentions and expecting to meet later at the airport, Cecilia was reluctant to let him in. However, Mario used a spare key to enter the building quietly and made his way to her apartment. Once inside, Mario immediately assaulted Cecilia, strangling her before she could scream or seek help. The struggle left visible marks on her arms, indicative of her desperate fight for survival. Unfortunately, she was overpowered. After killing her, Mario wrapped Cecilia's body in a blanket, retrieved the keys to her car, and drove to a remote river location while the rest of the building's occupants remained asleep. There, he weighted her body with rocks and submerged it in the water, hoping it would remain undiscovered. In an attempt to cover his tracks, Mario removed his waterlogged shoes, fearing they would leave evidence, and discarded them. He then returned to Cecilia's apartment using her car around 7 a.m. Once inside, he hastily collected several of her belongings, including important documents and her laptop, to fabricate the illusion of her having decided to leave suddenly. Mario also used Cecilia's phone to send messages to her family and friends, claiming she had impulsively taken a trip to the mountains. He then disposed of her phone along with the other items by tossing them from a bridge into the river. After ensuring all traces of the deception were set, Mario returned to his own apartment where he had already prepared for his departure. Back at his apartment, Mario took meticulous steps to eradicate any forensic evidence. He showered, changed into fresh clothes, and soaked his previously worn garments in bleach. Feeling secure in his actions, he then called a taxi and headed to the airport, making a detour to dispose of the last of Cecilia's belongings. Within an hour, he was aboard a plane, leaving the country under the false belief that he had effectively escaped justice. Due to Mario being a Brazilian citizen, extraditing him for trial in another country presented significant legal challenges. However, through diplomatic efforts, an agreement was reached to conduct a fair trial in his home country, ensuring that justice would be served while he remained in Brazil. The investigative and bureaucratic processes delayed the commencement of the trial until June 2023. Australian officials who were integral to the investigation traveled to Rio de Janeiro to attend the trial, ensuring all evidence was accurately presented and considered. Throughout the trial, Mario repeatedly sought to garner sympathy, tearfully expressing remorse and confusion over how the events had unfolded. On July 1, 2023, the court found Mario Santoro guilty of premeditated murder, evidence tampering, and obstructing the investigation. He was sentenced to 27 years in prison, with no possibility of parole. Despite his and his lawyer's attempts to appeal the verdict, the sentence was upheld by the court. Thank you for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe to my channel for more shocking and compelling stories like this one.